What's up, everyone? We're back with the Self Started podcast, and today we're doing an interview. I'm your host, Alex,
Mahim.
and this is our guest, Jordan. Jordan is a classmate of mine. We graduated Stony Brook together. Jordan, can you tell us more about yourself?
Well, hi. First of all, I graduated Stony Brook a year before you.
Yeah, I guess.
Second of all, so Alex and I went to college together. My degree is in political science, but I've been working as a photographer and a graphic designer now professionally, pretty much full time for about a year now.
Cool. So, we just put out a podcast about if college was worth it and gave our insights on that. And I think you come from an interesting background where you studied something and then obviously you pursued a different career choice. So I guess why don't we start with when you came into college, did you know what you wanted to do? Or did you want to go to college?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I started as business at my old school and then realized I didn't want to do that and that was too expensive. So I transferred to a state school. Mm-hmm. And then I went through different majors for maybe a little over a semester. I got there halfway through my freshman year and I had it decided by the midpoint of my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm. So why political science?
Yeah, that was actually my question. What if you weren't? So you said that you weren't particularly sure about what you wanted to do. So what drew you to political science?
Well, first it was there are things that I like. Like I really do enjoy math and I enjoy a lot of math concepts. But then it's the other thing, which is I have to find something that I like and something that I'm good at. So a lot of the things that I tried, like math, I did try for a little less than a semester. That wasn't working out. That was a little too much pressure on me. Looked at the two different math majors at Stony Brook, realized they weren't for me. And I was business at first, decided that was too generic. But I just kept taking different classes. I ended up doing political science because I was good at it. I have a very good memory. I was good at memorizing that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I could see myself working in politics, which I can't really see anymore.
So
interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. So I guess how did photography become like a career choice for you then?
Well, it started off in 2016-ish. Like during that time, I've always been interested in it. Like I like looking through different photographs. I like seeing the techniques that people use to create those. I'm good at Photoshop, so that was something that I had beforehand, and that was something I had experience doing professionally in a limited capacity while I was still at school. But photography came as more of an interest because then I could completely create something from scratch instead of just editing the work that somebody else made.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Cool.
So Alex told me that part of the reason that you went to college was because of parental pressure. Can you Can you just dive into and explaining your situation with how your parents treated college and what that was like in your household before you attended?
Well, it was more of just like I didn't really grow up with a lot of money, and it was just me and my mom. So it was kind of just you need to go and do this thing that'll make you more money, and I'm sure you'll find a thing. And she decided that when I was a kid, like when it was very basic, like elementary school, middle school, they were putting me in the honors classes. I went to a top high school in the United States, stuff like that. So I think at that point I was in too deep to say like, oh no, I don't really want to do this. And at that point, I did want to do that. I didn't know totally what I wanted to do with my life, and college helped me, not the way that it helps most people, but it did help me eventually.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you never really felt the pressure of like you needed to complete a degree. It was more of like this was like expected for you, and it was something that you thought you just had to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially because that's now, like I look at jobs that are super basic and they need a bachelor's degree. So that is a good thing to have if I, decide to pursue something else, like just a base bachelor's degree in anything. But yeah, I don't know if I want to do any of those jobs.
Sure. So how would you describe your college experience? Starting with, so you said that you went to a school before Stony Brook. So how long was what's the timeline there?
I went to Drexel University. That's in Philadelphia. That's the school that's not as good as UPenn. That's right next to UPenn.
Go Dragons.
Yeah, Drexel Dragons. A lot cooler than the Stony Brook Seawolves, but anyway. But yeah, so that was I think the first week I was there, I was like, oh, this is expensive. I don't like being here. There are a lot of reasons to save that money. Like, I want to go closer to home. I have a lot of friends at Stony already that they're doing a bunch of different stuff. And I kind of went in there not really knowing anyone, and it wasn't very good for me. So I transferred to Stony Brook, and I started transferring to Stony Brook the week after I started my first semester of college.
Wow.
And then I got my acceptance to Stony Brook on Veterans Day. And then I was like, oh, God, I'm out. So, yeah, after that, I went to Stony Brook as like business because that's how they accepted me. But I went to like the business for students, and I was like, I don't really see myself doing this, or like these are skills that I could acquire in a different way than through my education.
Interesting. Okay, so by skills, you what are some like example skills that you felt that you didn't necessarily need to be in a classroom to pick up?
Well, I think that there are things that I picked up in the classroom, just not stuff I picked up in the work implicitly, like, stuff about working together as a team, interpersonal communication, stuff like that. And also just really with the internet, it's really easy to find a way to do something you want to do. And that's also something like, you can't get fired from your own business for not having a degree. I hope.
It's very true. So I guess if you could do it all over again, would you do anything differently?
I mean, I still think that it was good for me in the way that I did things up to a certain point. I think that I should have dropped out when I realized I wasn't going to use my degree, and that was midway through my senior year. When Trump got elected, that was when I was like, oh, I don't want to use this degree for anything. But this is my senior year. I'm too far deep into this. I don't really have a choice but to continue.
Gotcha. So it was more like, oh, like I might as well finish it rather than like, or was there something else?
Yeah, it was kind of just I might as well finish it more than anything else, because it was I finished most of the classes for my major at that point. I just didn't bother to do like the general education stuff that we had. We had decks. So that was what I was doing. Like the last class that I took at Stony Brook was Spanish.
That must have been really useful.
I forgot it all before I went to Spain. So.
Oh man, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving a little bit away from the academics, socially, how did you feel? What was your experience like at Stony Brook?
Socially, it was great because I knew other people to begin with, and I'm around other people I know. It's a lot easier for me to meet new people. It took me a little while to branch out, partially because Stony Brook is a very dead university on the weekends. But I started branching out around the time Alex got there, which is why I know him.
2015.
Yeah, 2015. So, yeah, and then after that, it was pretty smooth sailing. It was like, all right, I'm comfortable.
Gotcha. Did you do any clubs that were related to your interests outside of your major?
Sort of. Like I'm a graphic designer and a photographer. I started with the graphic design, so it was a lot of finding these people that needed graphic designers, and it's like, oh, I could use this and like use this as a stepping stone to actually making money at school for it, which is what I did.
Oh, that's awesome. Alex, do you have any other school-related questions?
No, I mean, not really. I guess moving away from the academics, So, when you graduated, did you know that you wanted to pursue photography as like a career move? And then how did eventually this kind of evolve into this business that you kind of just took on?
So when I graduated Stony Brook, it was like, first of all, find a job because I
Yes.
was now living alone immediately after I graduated. So I needed money to do that. And then, that's really rough sailing. Like, just
Yeah.
finding a job in this economy if you're not, specifically skilled or if you don't have a degree in a certain thing. So during that summer after I graduated, that was June 2018, I started doing mostly wedding photography. Like I was just putting out information. Like I had my number and my email on Craigslist, and I was advertising my Instagram in places, and that's peak wedding season. So I was like, all right, I'm making enough money from this. Kind of still want a regular job, but
Mhm.
I'm okay making this money. And then I think it was probably by the beginning of 2019, I was like, okay, now I'm just running a business. That was not my intention, and that's just what's happening. So,
Oh, so
and then
you kind of like fell into it rather than like plan for that to be like the end game.
yeah, it was just kind of like, I was calling it, and Alex can verify this. I was just calling it freelancing. It's like, oh, I'm doing this work on the side. And then at some point I was like, oh, this is just my career. This is my life.
Yeah, you were basically doing photography all the time.
Yeah.
So how often would you take on clients?
Well, it like varied a lot depending on the year. Like that first summer after college, that's like peak wedding season, and I was doing like I don't remember exactly. I know this June I did 15 weddings in 25 days
Oh
from
wow.
from the end of May until June, and that was a lot of money per wedding. And I was like, oh wow, this is good. But there are some months like mm, really after fall, like right after fall, late November, Thanksgiving ish, where there's nothing. No one's getting married, and if they're getting married, they're doing it somewhere warm.
Hmm.
They don't need a New York based photographer, or those same people who just wanted like those one-on-one photography sessions don't want to go outside because a lot of people don't like the way they look when they're freezing.
That's pretty reasonable.
Makes
Um,
sense.
so with that in mind, last year, what did you do during that dead season for money, or did you, if anything?
Well, I had enough in savings that I could just not work, which is quite a privilege. But at that time, I was still stressed because I was like, okay, I have this money, but I would like more money.
Mm.
Hmm.
So that was a lot of focusing more on the graphic design, putting myself out there more like, oh, by the way, you know me from this, but I also do this, and I hope you like the way I do it. I think I do it well.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
I guess you had mentioned that you didn't think you would pursue photography full time, and I know when you had graduated, you were actually looking at like graphic design jobs and the sort. So I guess if you want it, so you're trying to move forward from the photography business, what would you go into? Would you fall back into graphic design? And kind of like, why do you want to move into a more like traditional career when the photography business is going pretty well?
Well, I think that the big reason that I wanted more of a traditional career is just so that I had like a better hold of what I was doing. It's kind of like this grass is greener effect where I have friends who they're happy at their jobs or they pretend to be happy at their jobs and they hang out with their coworkers and stuff. And I don't have any coworkers, so I don't really do that. A lot of the time working is
Hmm.
spent alone. So I was looking at
Hmm.
stuff like that. In general, and this is something I've realized maybe in the last couple months, it's like I like photography, I like graphic design, but I'm trying to shift from more event-oriented things to more creative. Like, there's only so much that you can do in an event besides, point and shoot and edit. And I kind of like the idea of, oh, I can go hiking on a random day and take a bunch of nice pictures and edit them myself and turn them into something that I like.
Hmm.
And for the graphic design, it's sort of that same thing where it's like, okay, I like doing this for other people, but I kind of want to try to like make more original artwork, like stuff that's for me. Not even stuff that I necessarily have to share and be like, yeah, I created this, but stuff that like I can look at myself and I'm like, I'm content with this. The problem is that when you have stuff where it's like, oh, I am content with this, you can't make money off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
really, now my goal moving forward is to figure out a way to monetize that and not lose creative control at all, having it all originating with me.
Okay.
Okay, interesting. So have you tried different monetization strategies that better fit your goal?
Well, the last couple of months, not sort of. I just moved into a new apartment, and I'm kind of more focusing on that. I'm also saving a little bit of money by being here, and that was pretty stressful, just moving all of my stuff into a new place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big life
But-
transition.
But yeah, I'm looking more into the monetization moving forward because that's a little difficult if I'm not, well known within my field to just make money by doing whatever I want. I mean, usually those people already have money, like a lot of money from something else, and they're like, okay, I'll open a gallery and then I'll charge people to come in, or they might donate or something. But got to start really small with that.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So, in that sense, it's almost like you'd still be working for yourself in the end, right?
Yeah, I mean that's that's kind of the goal of it, is to just not really rely on other people and exist. I think that's called fuck you money. That's something that I want to have.
Dan Locke, nice. Nice. Do you have a website with all your works right now?
You plug.
Well, right now I just have the Instagram that has pictures on it because the issue that I've noticed with having a website is that people will always hit you up asking you to do stuff for free. And that's a little frustrating trying to build something. I think that I need, before like I have a website, is to have a lot more work first, and that takes, especially with artwork, that takes time and a lot of different moods and like mental shifts in order to make different things. I do have the domain name, so that's good.
Okay.
You want to plug your Instagram handle?
It's j.banksy. Please don't ask me to do work for free. I get maybe a dozen of those DMs a week asking me. It's like, hey, can you take pictures of me? And I'm like, hey, how much? And they're like, oh, just for exposure or stuff like that.
Oh yeah. No, that's
free
cool. So,
labor.
Yeah.
Are these type of requests usually from people that or who are like, yeah, I know this guy, so he's gonna do me this favor, or is it like strangers just hitting you up?
It's like a little in between. Sometimes it's people I know. Sometimes it's people with a couple of degrees of separation. Like if it's a close friend and they're like, hey, can you do this for me? Then I'll usually do it because that's a friend. I don't really mind, and that's time spent with a friend. But it's some people who's like, oh, I saw you because you took a photo of so and so. Like, like, can you take my pictures? This time alone and make conversation with me? And I'm like,
no.
I'm like, no, I'm.
Yeah. You know what you're worth, and like nothing in life is really free.
Yeah, I get paid for like the awkwardness of meeting a new person. It's not really for the work. It's just that's the hard part. So I'd rather get paid for that.
Monetize your awkwardness.
Yeah,
you heard it here first. Dang. So I guess what kind of advice would you say for maybe someone that came from your situation, like a similar situation? They're pursuing a degree that they're not too like set on putting forth a career with. Should they explore different avenues, or should they kind of fall back on a creative passion? Like, I guess, what would you give your advice for like younger you, if with the knowledge you have now?
Do you know sunken cost fallacy?
No. That's
Oh
fine.
yeah.
I don't. He knows.
All right, yeah, you can explain it.
Well, I mean, it's just that because at that point I was like, okay, I put all this money into a degree, and it's like, so I must end up with something, even though it's that extra money I paid over the extra year I was there definitely was not worth it, and I would have been better off not paying that money.
Mm-hmm.
So, but also, if I give that advice to my younger self, I don't learn this, and at the same time, I might be sitting here beating myself up over not having a degree. So I'm not sure I want to change the past. Just if it worked out the way where it's like, hey, drop out now and just, do things that you do well. And I've been like, okay, future me, and then dropped out and it went well, then I'd be a year ahead of where I am now. So if I could make that happen magically, then I would definitely be like, hey, do this, please. You can keep your friends. Just do this.
It's easy to connect the dots looking backward.
Yeah. Like you have to fuck up to know that you've done something wrong, and then that doing something wrong changes you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Sometimes I feel like even if you know that someone tells you this is a mistake to do it some way, you kind of need to do it yourself to be like, yeah, I know for sure that wasn't the right way.
Yeah, especially I'm more of like a learner by doer. So I prefer to make the mistake. I will learn my lesson later, and I know I'll learn my lesson, just so I don't have the dissonance I have to fuck up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I can appreciate that mindset.
Cool.
So moving forward, so you said that you're trying to monetize your creative work more and not necessarily rely on other people to be like, hey, like we had this event, we want you to come work. Is there so do you have like a bigger vision that you're trying to achieve with your career right now?
I don't know, because a lot of the times where I've done something and it's like, oh, I've achieved this thing that I think was big, I've gotten to the point where I've achieved it and I'm like, okay, this wasn't as important to me as I thought it was, and now I'm kind of bummed out. So it's more of just I can afford to try these things right now, make these make these artistic mistakes and do this. It's really not that different from somebody putting music on a SoundCloud, being like hoping they'll get noticed or discovered or something. It's just with different media.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be luck, and I know that. So,
do you feel like your career as a photographer your connections will bring you kind of like more exposure and kind of segue into something else? Because they're both creative fields, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's more of a lot of the stuff that I was being hired for, it's like, oh, I need a photographer, not like, oh, I want my pictures to look nice, just like I need anyone.
I see.
Gotcha.
And then they found me. Fulfilling that need, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Do you have any advice for people that are in a similar position in terms of wanting to do a creative space, whether it be photography or graphic design or music, like you said? Do you have any specific advice for them?
Well, first of all, like, have enough money to, do stuff and live on, even if that means taking a job you might not really like, something that might not be totally related to your career path. And, that can also inspire you in other ways to make better art or music or whatever you're trying to create. You're facing this adversity and you're like, okay, now I know this new thing. I have this new world to draw these creative urges from. And now a lot of mine is like, I could talk for hours and hours about why I dislike being a wedding photographer. And I think the real problems with that industry. And it's good to have something giving you adversity, because no one wants to see the art of like someone who isn't struggling anyway. Like, no people who are totally off well are like, hey, like making these great things all of a sudden. It's always the people that are having trouble who persevere through that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that I think well-off people can't make art as well. It's just I think there's a different type, right?
Well, I think it's like I read this about different things. Mostly things where you're talking and learning, where you're probably not going to be able to give very good advice to people about certain things if you were born with a lot of money, because you have this different thing that not a lot of people can relate to. Yeah, or like if you're watching a stand-up comedy special and it's just a rich kid talking about how rich he is and why that's a problem and he's not aware of it, then it's not going to be very entertaining, and he's probably not very good at it.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to be relatable if like you're just like living in a completely different world, and I
Yeah.
think that translates through your art.
Yeah, and also, if you come from that world, you can struggle in plenty of other ways. Just acting like
Yeah.
one of the essential things that you need to exist in the modern world's totally taken care of compares to people who weren't born in that same situation is an issue for them.
Cool,
I
man.
hope that was a coherent sentence.
It's
No, I
about
think that makes sense.
relatability. No, I think
that
you
makes sense.
got the point across.
Okay.
Cool.
I guess I have another question. Do you think college is worth it? Because we talked about it in a previous show. Do you think college is worth it for, or what kind of person is college worth it for? I guess is a good question.
College is worth it for, if you need specialized skills or proof that you have those specialized skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to build a portfolio in a lot of different ways. I think college is worth it for those people. I don't think college is worth it if you can acquire the skills in a different way and you're entering a field where an advanced degree might not be required. And I think that decision is something important that you should make early on. But in general, college is going to, even just like a semester of college is going to be like, okay, like this is a new place with other people, and I might be learning from this, and then get all the information you can. And if you decide that you're not learning anymore, or you're not trying to pursue what you're pursuing anymore, then you should just cut it right there and not sink your money into it anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's pretty spot on, and I think a lot of people definitely need to look into the option of like, just because you start going to college and doesn't mean you're like locked into it for the 4 years. Like for me, I did 1 year of college, and that's when I decided to, after 1 year, and evaluating that year and looking into my experience, that's when I realized, okay, let me do something else here and take time off college, because college is not really helping me achieve my goals. So that time I took off was really important to find what I wanted to do and pursue it properly. And ultimately, I ended up not finishing college, but that 1 year was still important in figuring out like, okay, this is actually like definitively not the path I want to go down.
Yeah, it can help you make that decision. Absolutely. Yeah, I have a question for you actually. Like, there's, and I don't necessarily believe in it all the time. Like, type A and type B. Alex is like all the way type A.
I'm a highly competitive person.
Yeah, you're a highly competitive person. Like, where do you think you fall into that? Because I think that I'm a little bit more type B, and I'm thinking that we might have that in common. You just got a head start and you thought about it a little harder than I did.
Well, I think no, I'm pretty competitive too. Like I think I would lean more towards where Alex is at. Well, what makes you think that you're less like that than, or what makes you say that than Alex?
I mean, something that I see in a lot of type A people, and I'm actually discovering this in a lot of people who are in Alex's field now. I have a lot of friends who work the same job or a similar job that he has, are all like, all right, now I'm here, like I've succeeded. There's something missing. What now? Because I think that pure type A people, and I also think there's a lot between type A and type B, but like pure type A people might not think too critically about the work that they're doing and just being like, okay, like this will lead to success in some way. And then when they reach the logical endpoint of that, they're like, I kind of want to try some other stuff as well. Now they have more freedom, and that freedom is terrible. But, it's the start of something else.
I can see what you mean. Like, in terms of my own career, I'm definitely kind of learning more things as I go along and finding out like what I enjoy doing. And I guess it's like, oh yeah, like I got a job now. What is the next step? And a lot of times for the type of person I am, it's always what is the next step? And I think more so of lately, I've learned that you need to like take a step back and kind of appreciate what you have and just kind of take inventory really, and be content, but also pursue more is how I feel like a good, healthy, like competitive person should be. But I do wholeheartedly agree that a lot of people, especially in the tech field, it's always about the next rung on the ladder, and that can be very toxic in any kind of corporate environment.
Yeah, it's a. I've heard that. I've heard of friends like describe what you're going through who is in a similar field, and they called it freemium life.
Premium life.
Yeah, because it's like, you have like your job, which is like the ads that you really just want to get rid of, but you're doing pretty much fine with it.
Hmm.
It's just annoying that it's there and you'd like to get to the other side.
Yeah, it's always about the next step, you know? Can't stop, won't stop, Jordan.
Yeah, and some people, like, I'm definitely built differently from that. Like, I've always been like oh, why am I doing this? I remember when we started to adopt more standards about how you're supposed to do algebra. I was like frustrated, and I'm like, this is a stupid way to do this particular thing, and I refuse to do it right at a principle. I probably should have done it right anyway, but that's the kind of person I was that was just like, oh, like I have to be doing it. I have to be going to the beat of my own drum, or I don't feel like I'm going to be doing it well, no matter what.
Yeah. And it's difficult, especially when you have this system where people tell you this is the right way to do it. Especially with unconventional career paths and maybe not going to college. There's always going to be someone saying you should have done it the right way.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. But I think in the end, for things, what's important is as a person, you feel fulfilled by the work that you do and the people that you surround yourself with. And that should be the end goal for whether you be type A or type B.
Yeah.
And work-life balance, obviously.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's not to say like you must love your job either, because I know plenty of people that kind of, like you have obligations and responsibilities. You need to pay bills, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But what you do in your spare time is up to you, and just make sure that you feel that you're fulfilled by what you do outside of work.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a very American idea that it's like, okay, like I must work and then I have to keep working and working, and it's work over everything else. And then other places like one of my friends from England is just like, oh yeah, like there's work. I want to do all the other stuff that's not work, and
Uh-huh.
everyone there is like free admitting they don't really want to work because they're not scared of like this idea that it's okay to not want to.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think American culture definitely there is like a hyper competitiveness with careers, and like there's a lot of weight put into what you do and how much you make and that kind of stuff. And I think you're right. Like definitely in Europe, there's a different culture about work and like not being so just like on edge about it.
Yeah, like I didn't realize like it was such and I think it might even just be a New York City thing, not even an American thing. I can't say this for sure, but I've asked, people that I met from other places like, oh, like how much do you make? And they're offended. And I'm like, no, we just kind of talk
Yeah.
about that.
Oh no.
Alex
Yeah.
knows how much I make. I know how much he makes. That's pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'm living in I've been living in LA for the last two-ish years, and I think it's definitely more so a New York thing than LA. It's pretty laid back in that sense here, but in New York, definitely very cutthroat.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
in most major cities, even like I guess Silicon Valley or like Seattle, even when I studied abroad in Hong Kong, it's always if you're not at the top, then you're competing to get there. Really.
Yeah. Also, do you live in LA proper or you live in one of the surrounding areas?
No, I live in a Koreatown in LA proper.
Oh, nice. I've been trying to get out there myself. I actually almost did that very early this year, but I think I'm staying here for another year or so.
It's a good
Oh,
time.
yeah, now's a good time to I feel like when it's cold in New York, you definitely want to escape to LA.
Yeah. I mean, now I gotta kind of live out my lease here, but
Yeah.
maybe next year.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
for sure, man.
All right.
Cool.
We talked about a lot of things. Jordan, do you have any like closing remarks you want other people to know about you, or like advice to people that would view this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what to say. That's an original concept. It's kind of just do don't cave under the pressure unless that pressure is necessary. Like it's like, okay, my family is poor. I actually go need to make money. Then it becomes sort of a necessary thing. But if you're afforded the opportunity to, look into being happy, which being happy is expensive, but if you're afforded into that opportunity, then you should dive into that. You should, take that, try a bunch of new things. The camera stuff, that's pretty new to me. Like that was only late 2015, early 2016. But don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there in different ways. Like I get a lot of weird shit putting my number and email on Craigslist. I didn't know about the please do not solicit note at the bottom until like 2 or 3 months after I started doing it. But
Oh man.
yeah, and also, I have social anxiety, but don't be afraid to talk to new people about this. Like nobody wants a totally incompetent photographer who's just like, hey, do you want this picture? Do you want this here? Like, you got to be ready to do those things, even if it's difficult. And that's honestly the most difficult part of my job, because otherwise I like taking pictures and I like doing artwork.
Cool.
Awesome, man.
Thanks
Well, great
for chatting with us. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Yeah, this was good.
Cool. All right.
All right. We're signing off.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.